Marie, and I am going to start tonight a little bit different because, frankly, the topic which we are going to address this evening, who do you believe, is one of the most important questions that we can ask ourselves because the answer to it and the ramification of it has so much to do about everything we do from here on out. And so, as I begin, I'm going to do something that I have done in private, and I've done it once or twice on this show. But for the most part, this is a very near and dear practice to me that is very personal. Um, and I just feel called to do it tonight. I actually have been asked by a couple of folks who have been guests on the show. I will take time to get centered with them before we go live, and I'll say a prayer and I'll tell them they can join me or they can just sit quietly while I pray and kind of just center myself and bless the time, bless you and bless them and me, and just really breathe life into this conversation. And I always do that beforehand with each guest. But right now, I just feel I feel this urge and this compulsion within me to do that now. And frankly, I've thought about doing that at various occasions. And given the guests, a lot of whom are intrigued by that and ask, why don't you do this in public? Why do you only do this between the two of us? It's so intimate and it's intimate. It's something that is so important to me. This relationship with God is something that truly is something that is holy and sacred. And there are few precious things left in this world that are sacred. And I want to engage with whatever it is that is deemed sacred in a manner that likewise honors its sacrality. So, as such, I don't love doing this in public because I almost feel like it offers this really precious, beautiful, vulnerable thing that I hold so near and dear to me out for exposure to the elements, and we don't know what's going to happen. And so, all that to say, for so much of the time, I don't do this in public on this forum with you, but I feel like I'm supposed to do it tonight, and I am hopeful and prayerful that the outcome of it will be powerful. So I'm gonna take a minute right now and get centered, get aligned, and I welcome you to join me. For those of you who are going to participate in this conversation, participate in this show, we're diving into who do you believe, whose voice, who is the source of your soul, who is the source of your spirit, who's the source of your mind, of your thoughts, of the emotions that arise, who is feeding you, who is nourishing your mind, body, soul, spirit. And often there's a multitude of inputs, there's a multitude of sources. And this question of who do you believe is probably one of the most important. And I came face to face with it yesterday. So this is all very fresh for me. And I'm excited to dive in tonight, but I also feel a bit of reticence. So for that reason, I'm going to get aligned, and I'm just going to close my eyes and center my body and take some deep breaths. God, I sense just this inexpressible, I guess, feeling. I just feel like there's like this veil between heaven and earth right now where it's like the ability to convey something that is so important, that is so precious to us. It's like the secrets of our soul, the secrets of ourselves that remain so buried deep within us unless we go on the excavation of the soul and find them. And then we get to know them for ourselves, treasure them ourselves, and then share them with others. And God, I just know that I've been able to do some excavation in real time on these shows with these dear friends of mine, and it's a beautiful thing. And God, even now I just ask for help. God, that I will be able to convey this well. God, that I will change in the meantime. God, I'm here on Prince Edward Island, and it feels like its own wilderness of sorts. It's so beautiful yet so isolating. And every time I'm in this environment of the wilderness, it is so hard. It really is. It's painful and it's hard to be so alone. And yet, God, I feel willing. I'm just like, here I am. I want to learn everything I possibly can for this mission that I feel so deeply called to, for the people that I don't even know yet. God, I ask for revelation. I ask for power. I ask for healing. In Jesus' name. Okay, tonight we are going to be talking about who is our source, who do we believe? And over the last week, I actually had on Sunday, I was driving up. I flew into Boston late Saturday evening, rented a car, and it was actually very, very fun for me because I love my convertibles. And anytime I travel, I love getting a convertible where possible. And it's just, I actually still have my motorcycle license, but I haven't ridden a motorcycle in quite some time. And there's just something about having the air in your face and the breeze in your face, and just you feel one with nature while you're driving, and it's so fun. And so I love getting a convertible. So I show up to the Alamo, which is my car rental company, and I had rented a pickup truck, but I asked them, I was like, "Is there any way you have a convertible?" And there were two Mustangs. One was white and one was red. And I always love my little white Mustang. And so they let me switch it out for free. And so I drove over to a hotel about 10 minutes away in Boston. It was 2:30 in the morning, went to bed, woke up the next morning, got my rental car, my little Stang, and I drove up for about 10-ish hours. By the time I had done all my stops, it was like 10 to 12 hours driving up to Prince Edward Island. And I'm here for the next week and a half. And while I was driving, it was, about 10 and a half hours. And I ended up having a conversation with my dearest friend for about 5 hours of it. And it totally took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to chat with them for so long. But over the next couple of days since then, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've barely spoken. And it was interesting because we were supposed to have a quick little connection last night, and they weren't able to make it. And they were like, "I'm so sorry that, we weren't able to chat." And I just mentioned, I was like, "Oh no, like we actually have built relational equity over the trip on Sunday." Like, it was such a fun, surprising time. It totally caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to chat with you for so long. And it was like we had made deposits in the bank that is relational equity. And ever since then, I've just been musing on it. I'm like, there's something here when it comes to equity in relationships. And yesterday, I talked a lot about relationships and the potency of them and the impact that they really truly can make in our lives, not just on the business front, but on the interpersonal front. There is so much value in relationship, but it is almost as impactful as we are able to operate from a position of health. Like, they are as potent as we are healthy. Otherwise, their potency is almost in the negative. There's a positive potency and a negative potency, because you can always have influence for good or for evil, so to say. And so with that concept of our health, it really does equal and correlate to the health of our relationships. It warrants this deep examination of ourselves and thus our relationship with ourselves. I touched on this briefly yesterday, how our own relationship with self is the highest and truest form of honor for the lateral relationships in our lives. If we truly honor and value them, then we will and we must value ourselves, because from the outpouring and overflow of ourselves do we then give to others. And so we have to take the time to nurture and tend to and cultivate our inner selves, because that is what the outer world experiences. So, with this whole concept, then, as I've been thinking about it over the last 24, 48 hours of relational equity, I had this thought today. Am I building emotional, relational equity with myself? And what does that look like? What does that even mean, really? So, I was able to, on Sunday, have a very long conversation with my best friend, and it was fun. We were laughing, we were dreaming, we were visioning, etc. And then we were supposed to have a conversation, and that was a discouragement, a letdown. They, went back on their word, whatever you want to say. They were not able to fulfill on their commitment. Y'all, this happens all the time in our lives, where we say one thing and we end up doing another by no intention, but that's just the way the world works. And so then the question lies in, have I built up the relational equity with that person to withstand the disappointment, to withstand the going back on my word, or the lack of fulfilling on the commitment of what we agreed upon? And it goes also into, even with leadership, when we're talking in the boardroom and we say we're going to do this, and that doesn't happen for all of the copious reasons that make total logical sense. But do we have the relational equity built on data of trust, of proven processes, of proven work, that they know if it doesn't actually work out, then there must be a good reason? And so, with that, is not the relational equity that we're talking about, doesn't mean that we're always fulfilling on what we say we're going to do. It doesn't always mean that there's sunshine and rainbows on the other side of it. But what it means is that there is deposits in the bank that is the relationship, that there is then also data to back it up. And so we're building a repository of effectively good faith, and thus trust with the other person, to then be able to stand when the wind blows and comes and threatens to knock over the relationship. And so if we're not building and investing into the bank of this relational structure, an entity, so to say, then we're going to be that much more easily swayed and moved when the hard times do come, when the faith is questioned, and we have to, it's like, what are we falling back on? Is there anything to fall back on? And what I realized yesterday, I was actually, so after commenting this to my friend, I just was musing on the concept of relational equity. And yesterday evening, after the Knowing Show, I was writing a post on Facebook. And as I was writing, I was reflecting on how, at the conclusion of the Knowing Show yesterday, I did something that I really, really felt just so uncomfortable doing. I talked about how I am offering knowing assessments, one-to-one knowing assessments, for anyone who's willing to go into the arena. They don't have to go into it alone. I'll go into it with them. And it's a 90-minute session, and they'll walk away with effectively a game plan for the next little bit around how can they continue to do the work alone. Because I went to therapy, and my therapy was kind of my own arena, but I really came into the therapeutic sessions with my own questions, with the books I was reading, with my own questions and prompts and angles, and like, this is the direction I want to go. Like, I would lead my therapy sessions. And then I realized I really can't heal on my own. Like, so much of this work is, yes, it's helpful having somebody to bounce things off of, but like, y'all, we should never, ever be dependent on anyone outside of ourselves, because we have what we need in order to self-perpetuate healing. I have experienced that firsthand, and I can get into that honestly probably on another Knowing Show. Um, so if that's something that you'd like to chat about, let me know. But for today, the ideal is that we cultivate the wherewithal to be able to do the healing work alone, so that I can go on to, and this is a real example, go onto an airplane. I'm standing in line to put my bags in the overhead bins, take my seat, put my bags under my seat, and then let the person behind me go forth. Well, when it's my turn. I've given everyone else all of the time in the world, but it's my turn. All of a sudden, it's like I get the cold sweats and I'm like, what? Where does my stuff go? All of a sudden, I feel just keenly self-conscious and aware of how big my body is and all the space I'm taking up and how much time I'm taking. And it's all of a sudden I feel so much pressure. And what it means to actually do the work and heal on your own is that then after that whole experience, I sat down and I was like, what in the heck just happened? What like came over me? I was totally fine. And then the second that person sat down in their seat, it was like, oh my gosh, like how can I get out of the way fast enough? And I just felt so out of alignment. So the deep work, doing the deep work and actually being able to go inward is something each one of us has the ability to do, given that we know how, to then be able to sit down and say, okay, what just happened? What was the genesis of the very inciting event that leads to me thinking that I actually do not deserve the same amount of respect as people around me? Because that's ultimately what it is, right? I actually fundamentally have had a self-worth issue that came to light by way of boarding a plane. And so when we know how to do the work by ourselves, we get to be able to answer those questions and kind of heal on our own. And so where I'm kind of going with this is that as I was writing yesterday and talking about this whole experience of going into the arena, offering this at the end of the knowing show, which is something that I've been advised time and time again. Just say that you offer this thing. Like people need it, people want it. Just say you do it. And I have not wanted to. And I've just felt this like a serious aversion to selling. And I put that in air quotes for those listening to this in the future. In April, I was really diving into why do I hate selling so much? And I really dove in and I got kind of close to different and I actually landed on different reasons that resonated, but it was like that's not necessarily it because I'm still struggling with this. And honestly, up until yesterday, so 6 months of asking this question, why am I struggling with it? And then just coming to the place of like yesterday, I just got to do it. I just need to start putting in the reps. It's like going to the gym. I don't feel like it. I don't necessarily know what is the core root reason of why I don't want to do it. Well, it's a lot of reasons. It's I don't want to wake up early. I don't want to work out. I don't want to be in the discomfort of being in an unfamiliar place. My bed is very familiar. I don't want to put on these tight clothes because look at my rolls, etc., etc. And so it felt kind of like that yesterday of like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it messy. I'm going to do it imperfectly. I don't know why. I really don't want to. I don't understand the genesis of the strong aversion that I feel towards putting out an offer, but I'm going to do it anyways. And so I was literally typing yesterday. I was typing on Facebook and sharing this story of like, I did it. Woohoo. I even took a cute little picture with I had such a cute little fall outfit skirt on yesterday. It was very cute. So I was posting this video or this post. And as I was writing, all of a sudden it hit me. I realized it. I realized that the reason why for years upon years of my life, I have hated the thought of ever selling anything. Literally, before I started my agency, my former boss would take me out on business development. All I would do was talk about the other person. Like, tell me everything about your life. And I never wanted to talk about what we did because I felt bad. Like I didn't want to sell them anything. I felt guilty sharing anything that could even be helpful to them because I didn't want them to think I was asking them for money. And so I was just like, let me just not ever even. So this has been a very constant theme in my life. And so as I was typing out yesterday, I realized the core root. I have to trust myself. I have to trust my heart. I have to trust that which I know to be true. Because otherwise, I'm fixated on everyone around me that frankly, I've seen example after example after example of people selling things that they end up not being able to fulfill on, that they are actually not integrous. They're over promising, under delivering. And I feel like I'm surrounded. I remember the very first time I went to speak on my big stage. I won't say what event it was, but it was a massive marketing event. And I walk in, I'm one of the speakers. So I get to go to this after party, and I'm in with all of these very impressive individuals. And I felt like a fish out of water because everyone there they were just talking in these terms where I was like, that's literally manipulation. What is going on? Like, I don't belong here. And it made me feel just so like, I don't even want to say I do marketing. You know what I mean? Like, it just made, I felt so, I felt guilty by association. And what I realized yesterday is that I had been so fixated on everyone around me and who I didn't want to be, rather than focusing and honing in on the fact that, you know what, if I'm walking in vertical alignment, I'm not that person. I actually can be my own ideal. I actually can live according to this beautiful, beautiful picture of this woman that I've created in my mind's eye, that I strive to live and come under. It's almost like coming under the authority of this ideal, this beautiful vision and picture of the masculine and feminine working in concert together, and me walking in the power of both, and being able to have the nurturing tenderness of the right brain, and the organized structure and strategic direction of the left, and being able to really come forward with shoulders rolled back, head held high, and taking prowess in a space, knowing that my heart is pure. And it was almost this disparate viewpoint that I didn't even know that I had, that it's like, if I'm going to walk in this prowess and power, then I'm ultimately kind of automatically going to be slimy. Like, you almost can't help but be slimy if you're going to actually hold that posture and hold that position. And so yesterday, it was just so powerful, realizing that I get to, and I can trust myself, because I have done so much work on cultivating me and who I am. I know my ideal. I walk in that so much of the time. I think one of the best compliments I've ever gotten is from the man I love. And he's like, you are who you say you want to be. And man, may that always be true for the rest of my life. And what that means, though, is that I need to start building relational equity with myself, so that when it comes time for me to say, hey, I offer the Knowing Arena. It's a 12-week program. It changes lives. I've seen it happen. I've seen my life change. I've seen many other executives' lives change. I do the Knowing Founder, and I can talk about all these services, trusting my heart, trusting the transformation, trusting me, and trusting the internal. And I will never be able to control the other person. And so I really, even now, oh my gosh, isn't this the truth? Even now, as I'm saying this, I realize that my lack of ability to just go inward and speak from that which I know, and being able to trust myself and the truth there, man, I'm actually trying to control the entire dynamic by trying to control their perception. Here is the reality of what we all hate, but it's a fact. We see the world through our lens. And if we've got all these wounds clouding our lens, we're not actually able to see that which is. And so, for example, when I was married for 8.5 years, I existed solely focused and sitting in my husband's experience. I viewed the world through his lens. I had no access to my own experience. I had no access to my seat, because I was so codependent and so leaning in towards the empathy of what his whole life experience was, and just trying so hard to make him happy, that I just had zero association with what was true for me. And so I realize, even now, as I'm going through this with you, our lack of relational equity prevents us from being able to see the truth of our own experience, trust it, be able to operate from this place of true alignment, because we're viewing the world still from everyone else's perspective, because all of our emotional equity is going into those relationships. We're not building anything with us. We're not deepening it and strengthening it and like firming up the foundation to then be able to stand strong and tall when the winds blow. And the winds might look like somebody coming into me one day saying, Christene, you are a slimy snake trying to sell me crap. And I can and I need to be able to hear that and say, man, I know that that's not my heart. But here is the thing. There have been many times in my life where someone will say something to me based on their experience, and I know it is not true. Yet it's almost like it's the dark side of empathy. I learned about this a couple months ago, and I haven't returned to it yet. The dark side of empathy is ultimately what breeds and really fuels codependency, which is just this overindulgence into the other person's experience where we negate, and it's almost, it's not a negating, it's a negligence of truth. It's a abandonment of it. And if we think of truth as something that is its own frequency, it's a thing. It's living and breathing. It's alive. The truth is alive. It's what is. It's what almost like surrounds us all. And I actually need to lean into that concept of what is truth, right? Well, frankly, if we want to get spiritual with it, how much of truth has to do with the divine himself. And so if I am abandoning that which I know to be true, how much am I actually disassociating myself from God himself? Y'all, it's so, so important. It's not just fun and games. It's not just this, let me make people feel good. And I'm realizing more and more how very dangerous that is. Because and I lived that way for the majority of my 20s. I still am tempted towards that. And you know what's also hard? It's hard to not flip and do the 180 of like, well, then I don't care at all about what people think. I'm just going to kind of do my own thing. And frankly, we see culture in that space right now. It's actually dangerously so. This whole concept of self-love has actually been flipped on its head, and now it's self-centered, self-focused, self-obsessed, and it's leaving the people that we love, the people that we're supposed to care about, on the sidelines of our lives. And we are lacking community, and we're seeing more isolation than ever. What is it? Meta determined that people are more lonely than ever, so they created meta friends. That is awful. Actually, we're more connected than ever, so we really should be more satiated and fulfilled. Y'all, we are made for community. We are made for connection. Yet I really believe, and I'm experiencing this for myself right here, right now, and on the beautiful island, Prince Edward Island in Canada. It is so tempting to distract myself. I was considering what inputs really mean yesterday. I was considering what is the difference between, because everything is an input. So what is the difference between healthy inputs, unhealthy inputs, the inputs that distract and pull me out of the present moment, inputs that ground me in the present moment? What are the even, oh yes, this is what it was. David Hawkins, in the book Letting Go, he talks about effectively assigning a numerical value to an emotion. And it effectively starts at the lowest, which is shame. I think it's 50. And then the numerical value increases as the emotion increases in terms of like frequency and energy. Because if you experience someone who's shameful, they're kind of like closed up and covered and quiet and going inward. So it's actually a lower regulated frequency, thus a lower numerical value than someone who's experiencing courage, because they're bigger and bolder and more out there. And you can sense a difference in the numerical value of that energetic level, just like you can in terms of the size and buoyancy of the energy which they're giving you. And so we need to effectively be able to analyze these inputs in a similar way. Which inputs bring us down in our own emotional frequency versus elevating us upward. Even now, as I'm talking, as I'm literally, intuary is the Latin word, root word for intuition. It means to be taught from within. So this teaching from within is exciting to me. It like arouses me. It makes me passionate and excited, and I get bigger, and I feel myself come alive. And then when I think about being on my phone and watching reels, there is something that can be really impactful about that at times. In fact, I have a 20-minute time limit on my phone that alerts me every time that I've hit my limit. So that's helpful to kind of keep me in check. But for the most part, I actually find myself down regulating very quickly when I'm on my phone, when I'm watching a show even. Y'all, even drinking wine. I realized that tonight. I went to the store and got a little bottle of wine, and I was so excited. But within a glass of wine, I just felt myself come down multiple notches. You know what's another thing? This is why activating all of our intelligences and being able to understand where and how our spirit, soul, intellect, and physical body interact with different modalities. Let's just say that, because they're so different from each other. Watching reels versus intuition, right? Very, very different in terms of what's actually happening within us. My flashlight's on. I was grabbing my phone and turned it on. When it comes to eating food that has seed oils, that immediately downregulates me. It is wild. It does not have to be something electronic. Everything is an input. Everything is feeding and nourishing some part of our intelligences, and is either upregulating or downregulating. And really, there's no neutral baseline. We're either feeding and bringing life and bringing energy, or we're detracting and it's actually pulling away. It's sucking something from us and it's sucking us dry. And so when we analyze this question of, well, who do I believe? Y'all, it is wild what can happen when I am in alignment, I am healthy and well, but then I pick up my phone, or I, God forbid, eat cashews that have peanut oil in it. And then I start feeling, this happened the other day, I bought cashews from the store. I immediately started feeling pain down my neck into my shoulder. And I was like, what is happening? And I picked up the bag and it said peanut oil on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so instant. Y'all, these modalities, these physical, intangible things, everything in between, have so much power and because this is where it's they have the power to bring us out of alignment. So where I was first listening to my true self, being in connection with my higher ideal, with God, having something, whether it's digital, physical, or otherwise, can just move me ever so slightly out of my alignment, that all of a sudden, who do I believe? Well, I'm no longer hooked up to my ideal here. Now that comes crashing down, and now my source is over here. So the more we're actually in alignment, the more we're really able to be in the guise of hearing that which is true. This practice of vertical alignment for me, every single morning, I have to feed my spirit. I have to be telling myself that which is true and reminding myself of that which is true. My eulogy, I'll read that on a morning by morning basis. Reading scripture, honestly, letting go, reading Course in Miracles. There are different books that allow for me to feed the power source of truth in my spirit, so that when my emotions come in and thus come to the table of effectively my boardroom, my intelligences are all there, and I can say, okay, let's take stock of what's going on. I know that when I went to the grocery store today, I walked in feeling great, and I walked out. I had my little bottle of wine. I was so excited, and came home. And when I sat down, I had a glass of wine, and just, it was ever so slightly, it was just a little bit of deviation. Okay, so what data does that have to offer me? And then I had the best coconut chocolate macaroon ever, and I felt even more out of alignment. It was so weird. It's like the sugar does something to my body that just really kind of like messes with me. And y'all, we're so connected. We're so integrated in our being that all of these little elements, whether it's what other people have to say or distracting inputs or physical inputs, which is sugar, they all have a numerical value to them to either detract or add to our lives. And they have so much power that they can alter the voices that we hear in our minds. They can start feeding us those old narratives, those old concepts that aren't true anymore, that we've done the work to hash out. And I know this because right after I had my glass of wine and my coconut macaroon, I immediately started feeling sad. It wasn't that I didn't feel well physically. It's that literally my emotions shifted when I started feeding my body something that wasn't healthy. And it was that energy crash. So, y'all, it is so important that we understand how all of this is intertwined and intersected to constitute the whole human being. So, when we consider who am I listening to, building relational equity with ourselves to ensure that we've got a strong foundation upon which to stand when the wind does blow. The question is, it's not just building equity on an emotional level, it's not just building equity on a relational level. Am I actually tending to my physical body so that when I want to have a glass of wine, you know what? I bet you if I had worked out this morning, I didn't work out. I bet you if I had worked out this morning, I probably could have enjoyed that glass of wine and not really felt anything. But I didn't put in the equity into my physical body so that it could then counterbalance having something that is as good for it. And it's not like wine's terrible, but if I'm not doing the work to feed and have the proper inputs so that when I do want to have a little bit of fun or play in this one regard or get on my phone, because what a blessing to be able to connect with people around the world, I'm not taking away from a neutral baseline. Now I'm not going into the negative. I'm still able to maintain a positive, let's say positive equity, but I am taking out. And so what that changes is that now we're that much more intentional every time we do pick up our phone, every time we do flick on the TV, every time we do sit down and choose a book over our phone or something that's really nourishing our mind, body, soul, spirit. And I think that that's it. I think that that's all that I have for tonight. Y'all, if you know someone who is looking to do the work, I offer a one-time only 90-minute session. I'll put it at the conclusion of this video. And I'm practicing. I'm practicing doing the work with you all. So I appreciate, I appreciate the opportunity to grow with you. I appreciate your feedback and how we can all grow together. Isn't that so much better and so much more fun to actually grow alongside someone else rather than having to do all of the work in isolation? Loneliness is an epidemic in and of itself. And I believe that we really can curb that so long as we do the work to cultivate ourselves so that the overflow and the outpouring of ourselves is life-giving to those around us. I'll talk to you